There's nothing quite like waking up to see all of your wealth being destroyed right in front of your eyes. Well, here's the deal. Today we're looking at a cascading collapse across mainstream markets that is certainly having its ripple effect here in crypto land. But I believe that this resolves to the upside tremendously. So hear me out here as we're gonna go through what's going on across the world, how it's impacting crypto, some stories that I'm quite sure you won't be tracking, and making a conclusion, in my opinion, that this is going to lead to some opportunistic entry levels for those who want them, as well as playing into a theory that we've been discussing for quite some time, which is a deflationary shock that leads to yet another March 2020-like moment. And we know how that ended. So bear with me here because this is going to be very important content for understanding how to navigate the next few weeks and months. So many are thinking that Evergrande could just be the tip of the iceberg. Record high debt levels worldwide will continue to create instability and potential black swan events in financial markets in the years to come. As Nicholas Merton says, Evergrande is a perfect caricature of our economy where federal officials, central banks, and central planners are left to manage the economy. Remember, Evergrande just built all of these structures and just pushed the pace of growth of development way beyond the demand. And this is where supply and demand in a free market is really the optimal solution, because if central banks and planners like China just go ahead and say, all right, well, we're just going to build all these structures, but 25% of their properties remain vacant, this is where you get the over leveraging and where you have no demand to soak up the supply that you're creating, and you have what we've seen, which is essentially vacant properties that need to be demolished in order to control costs. We also see stories like this, which is that, hey, Chinese stocks are pulling the rug like they are shat coins. And here we see another Hong Kong stock here absolutely collapsing here, 87%. And look at this volume signature and collapse. I mean, that is nuts. And someone aptly commented below this, did Mark Cuban just buy this or what? All right, it's funny. You gotta laugh sometimes. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. I wonder which stage we're at right now, because it certainly feels like a fight has been brewing. And since just a few days ago, perfectly correlated to one specific date, the actual fight against cryptocurrency has ramped up to entirely new levels. And quite frankly, there is so much going on that it deserves its own segment to analyze the course of events here and show how the stage we're in is an entirely new ballgame. And that means that crypto is on its way to one of the most massive transitionary phases in the history of its existence, and quite frankly, it signals that this movement is even more powerful than probably any of us had previously dreamed. On September 7th, 2021, what we saw was the first nation adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, and this was El Salvador. Now, at first, everyone was memeing this. In fact, I remembered thinking to myself, this really isn't that big of a deal, right? Because El Salvador is not that big of an economy, this, that, and the other thing. I was thinking about it and reminiscing on it. And what I realized is there's something incredibly profound here, which is that you have an objectively low impact nation, one of the poorer nations in the world. However, if their citizens start transacting in Bitcoin and by doing so, end up elevating themselves even slightly into a less impoverished state, start building wealth, start growing away from the dollarization that has kept them poor, well, wouldn't that be a very profound movement? And wouldn't that attract more and more nations to do the same? By letting the El Salvadorians win this experiment, as small of a nation as this might be, how important of an impact would that be? And what kind of a signal would that send to the rest of the world? Well, guess what? That's an experiment that clearly on September 7th, 2021 was something that the powers that be, whatever you call them, decided was something that couldn't happen. It just couldn't, because look, we had this glorious uptrend in Bitcoin over the past several weeks, and then what did we get? On September 7th, to the minute, the day that El Salvador actually allowed their citizens to start transacting in Bitcoin, we get a historic flash crash. This was not your average flash crash. This actually took everyone by surprise. Yes, the market was getting over leveraged and greedy, but there are some coincidences that are just too eerie to ignore. Now, I kind of wrote this off at first, but the more that I peeled back the layers and started to analyze how significant and symbolic this would be if El Salvador's people started to be elevated out of their impoverished state with the new Bitcoin standard of transaction and value, well, that would be something incredibly profound. And you could see more and more nations hopping on, with every nation hopping on, making Bitcoin stronger, more resilient, more liquid, and of course, more valuable. Despite all the FUD, crypto is here. and it doesn't appear that it is going anywhere anytime soon, as institutions are holding the line. Today we're going to go over the weakening FUD, the strengthening backing from institutions, but to calm your mind even more, let's look at the on-chain metrics here. After the short-term BTC investors sold off in a flight to safety, long-term investors piled on with buys. Even as equities tanked further, this time investors aren't selling. So what we saw here, once again, is that we see the long-term investors soaking up that new supply being sold by short-term holders. Again, the traders and flippers are selling their coins to the long-term diamond hands, and this is setting up for a supply squeeze to the upside at some point in the not-too-distant future. As always, the FUD is also getting weaker. As expected, we've gotten short-term resolution from the Evergrande crisis. Local reports say Evergrande will be able to make interest payments on time. A national and potentially global debt crisis is looming. So what are national banks doing? Of course, money printer go burr. Chinese central bank starts to inject massive amounts of money into the financial system for the first time in 6 months, stabilizing stocks and bonds in domestic markets. We see that China is bailing out Evergrande. We know that this was going to happen. They're the kings of stimulating the economy, and they were not going to stop. This time, it makes it even easier for the United States to extend tapering and, of course, to print more, as the dollar, especially against the dreaded yuan, is going to look even stronger. So printing and debasing a little more to subsidize the economy looks even better. At any rate, the markets are looking a lot more blue-skied today than yesterday, where things were cloudy and stormy at best. This is always the way things go, is things are darkest before the dawn. We can expect a lot more noise, a lot more litigation, a lot more friction as crypto enters the mainstream, but make no mistake, we are at a tipping point here in crypto where over the next few years, this stuff is going to go totally mainstream. Between NFTs, gaming, DeFi, and all of the important technologies here, we're going to see crypto truly take over the internet. So what you're participating in is historic. It's important to understand that it was never going to be easy, but we're going to see a lot of huge breakthroughs, huge consolidations, manipulative stories, and FUD, and I'll be here with you each and every step of the way. Twitter announcing that they are going to integrate NFTs into the protocol. Now, of course, they announced this in concert with the fact that they would be adding Bitcoin Lightning tipping, but I'm here to tell you that this is going to be the biggest change, something I predicted would come in the very near future, which was NFTs being integrated with social media, which is, of course, the first real utility being unlocked. But what is even more important here is the story about Ethereum addresses, as Bitcoin Lightning Network tipping on Twitter is cool, but verified NFT avatars, if implemented well, is going to be the first layer of the metaverse. Extremely cool. And I commented here, I love this new Kobe. Kobe's not always as positive as this. Anyway, the reality is that this is the beginning of the metaverse. I've said it, the metaverse is all around us. We're in the metaverse right now. If you're watching me on YouTube, we interact in the metaverse on Twitter. Every time I'm in a game playing with other people, I'm in the metaverse. It's just a 2D flat metaverse. It's not a full VR metaverse, but we're working our way there. So while Bitcoin Lightning payments are cool, you need to be watching the NFT space, which is most people think is now dead once again, and that is such a beautiful thing, which is that when people think the actual most disruptive future assets of the crypto ecosystem have died, that's a perfect time that you should be paying attention, because I promise you, this JPEG mania is leading to something very profound. It's a shift to a fully digital native society, and you need to be paying attention and taking this seriously. Yes, we're loading the dip, and as we do it, I'm looking for lower prices on gems. Today's video is going to be about coins that I want to buy more of as this dip continues, if it does continue, of course. So understand the conditions for this video are that we dip further in a little bit of a last shakeout before we finish or start moving towards the end of this accumulation phase, which ends at 48,000. Once we break above that again, I think we're full send mode. First and foremost, we have my baby AVAX. That's right, we've been talking about this over the last few weeks, and money, attention, and excitement are just pouring into the Avalanche ecosystem. So if this thing goes back on sale again, I will scoop up some more. We also have the #1 leading DEX here on Avalanche, in my opinion, which is Joe, Trader Joe XYZ here. I do believe Trader Joe is, in my opinion, one of the best bets in the market if we dump. Now we also have Solana. Now, as we know, Solana here has been pumping aggressively without any real pause for several months, and now we've had a nice period of sort of like this this really looks like a nice trend reversal here. So if this thing dumps down really hard, I'll probably be loading up a lot because I think Solana's gonna run it back turbo again. Speaking of Solana gems, we also have Star Atlas here. I told you guys Star Atlas was way overvalued at the beginning, and this was as it was peaking up. Everyone was FOMOing into it, and I'm thinking like maybe 3 cents or below. That's where I'd start to get kind of hungry and want to start gobbling up the dip. And finally, I wanted to get into some NFT stuff because what you'll see here is that the gains in NFTs are just clowning the gains in other projects. And yes, there's a ton of NFTs that suck. There's a ton of NFTs that only go down. But you could say the exact same thing about altcoins. There's a ton of bad altcoins out there. And this is one I just got told about this morning from the CyberKongz Discord. And so I jumped right in. It's this project Monster Buds. It's essentially breeding with weed-inspired NFTs. So you can breed these strains of weed to create new ones. The artist behind this one is behind another project called Non-Fungible Bones, which was super beloved and popular across NFT Twitter over the last week or so. And so the artist is well reputed, as well as they have the breeding mechanics. It's kind of like a CryptoKitties Axie Infinity for weed with a good artist. So people are really liking this concept. So there you have it, gems that I'm looking to scoop up on the dip if there is a capitulation candle here in crypto land. I don't believe in any way that this FUD is going to restrict a Q4 Giga bull run. So I'm here preparing for it and going super long on the projects that I think are not only high quality, but important to the newest and least saturated ecosystems in crypto land, whether that's Avalanche, Solana, Polkadot, or NFTs. I've been trying to give you the keys to the kingdom, and I'm going to continue to do so. And if that's a value to you, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, of course, because these videos are ultra time sensitive. Imagine if you had seen the video for Subducks when it was 0.1, you'd be up 45x right now, and that's not going to stop. We're going to keep giving you the keys to the kingdom here.